What if the silence you hate the most isn't neglect, but design? What if the pause you're trying to escape is the very mechanism shaping your future power? Most people interpret delay as rejection. They hear nothing and assume they've been ignored. But history tells a darker, sharper story. In 1513, exiled from Florence, stripped of rank and relevance, Niccolò Machiavelli sat alone and wrote about power while having none. And inside that solitude, he uncovered a truth so unsettling it still explains why empires fall, why prayers feel unanswered, and why acting too early ruins more lives than acting too late. Machiavelli noticed something others refuse to see. Power doesn't reward urgency, it punishes it. The world is littered with people who move too fast, who revealed their hand before the table was set, who spoke before the room was listening, who reached for authority before reality could support them. He wrote it plainly. Those who abandon what is for what should be hasten their own destruction. In other words, when desire outruns timing, collapse follows. Premature action is not courage. It is impatience wearing confidence like a mask. Think of power like a blade being forged. Strike the metal too soon, and it shatters. Wait too long, and it cools into uselessness. Timing is the fire, and those who control the fire control the outcome. Machiavelli watched this truth play out in real blood, real kingdoms. Cesare Borgia, feared, brilliant, backed by armies and papal influence, rose with terrifying speed. He seemed unstoppable. Until he wasn't. His fatal mistake wasn't weakness. It was haste. He revealed force before the ground beneath him had hardened. He acted as if momentum alone could replace structure. When fortune shifted, there was nothing underneath him but air. Power exposed too early becomes a target. Power restrained becomes inevitable. Here's where the idea turns uncomfortable. What if the same principle governs your life? What if the silence you're fighting is not resistance, but restraint? Because Machiavelli didn't just observe rulers. He observed patterns. And the pattern is this. The one who controls timing controls destiny. Look at the ancient stories we pretend are about faith, but are really about preparation. Abraham is promised a future at 75 and waits decades to touch it. Moses is called, then hidden in obscurity for 40 years. David is anointed king as a boy, then hunted like an animal before wearing a crown. Even Jesus lives 30 years in silence for 3 years of visible action. If delay were failure, history would look very different. But delay is not failure. Delay is compression. Pressure builds. Weaknesses surface. Character either forms or fractures. Waiting is not inactivity. It is incubation. Like a seed buried underground, unseen, misunderstood, written off. But underground is where roots form. And without roots, height is suicide. Machiavelli understood something most modern minds reject. Premature power doesn't just fail, it disqualifies you from future legitimacy. When you seize before the moment ripens, you don't just lose the prize, you poison the ground beneath it. David understood this when he refused to kill Saul. He had opportunity. He had justification. He had encouragement. And still, he waited, because he knew the crown taken too early becomes a curse. Better to arrive late with legitimacy than early with blood on your hands. This is not passivity. This is restraint with teeth. Imagine power as gravity. The more mass you accumulate quietly, the stronger your pull becomes. But if you try to fly before gravity finishes its work, you drift weightless, directionless, exposed. The most dangerous people are not those who move first. They are the ones who wait while everyone else reveals themselves. So when you feel delayed, when your career stalls, when recognition lags, when the door doesn't open on your command, ask a sharper question. Not, why isn't this happening? But, what is being built right now that speed would destroy? Because readiness is not about desire, it's about capacity. And capacity is earned in silence. Machiavelli would tell you this: fortune favors those who know how to wait without decaying, those who use stillness as surveillance, those who let others burn themselves out on noise while they sharpen in the dark. Think of a predator in tall grass. It does not sprint at every movement. It waits, muscles loaded, senses wide. And when it moves, the outcome is already decided. Your delay is not empty time, it is strategic time. And if you learn how to inhabit it, to prepare instead of panic, you don't just survive the waiting, you emerge from it altered, heavier, calmer, dangerous in a way impatience can never be. This is the first fracture in the illusion. Power is not taken when you want it. It arrives when you are ready to hold it without being consumed. The most common mistake people make with power is confusing movement with progress. They believe that action itself is proof of strength, that if they're doing anything, they're advancing. Machiavelli saw through this illusion immediately. He understood that motion without alignment is not progress. It is exposure. And exposure, in the realm of power, is an invitation to be dismantled. He observed that weak rulers shared one fatal habit. They acted to relieve inner pressure, not to shape external reality. They mistook urgency for importance. They felt the heat of anxiety and mistook it for destiny calling. But anxiety is not a signal to move. It is often a signal to wait. Here's the brutal truth. The moment you act to escape discomfort, instead of to seize advantage, you surrender control. Power is never seized to feel better. It is seized when conditions are ready to submit. Machiavelli framed this as intelligence before action. Information warfare. He warned that no move should be made without understanding the terrain, the players, the hidden incentives, and the unseen consequences. Acting without intelligence is not bravery. It is blindness with momentum. Think of timing as a lock, not a door. Force doesn't open it. Precision does. You can push all day, but unless the internal pins align, nothing turns. The impatient man keeps pushing. The strategist studies the mechanism. This is where the divine parallel becomes impossible to ignore. What people call unanswered prayer often isn't silence, it's incomplete information. You're asking for an outcome without understanding the variables that would destroy you if it arrived early. The relationship you want before you've learned discernment. The position you crave before you've learned restraint. The money you ask for before you've built systems to contain it. Machiavelli would say this plainly. Power given before preparation becomes a weapon turned inward. Look at how often delay protects you from yourself. You didn't get that promotion yet because your reputation hadn't matured. You didn't enter that relationship yet because the foundation wasn't stable. You didn't escape that job yet because the market conditions weren't aligned. When people finally look back, they often realize the delay wasn't a wall, it was a shield. There is a second principle Machiavelli emphasized that most people misunderstand: opposition exhaustion. Sometimes the smartest move is not to confront resistance, but to let it collapse under its own weight. The impatient man fights every obstacle head-on. The strategist lets time do the killing. Enemies burn energy maintaining hostility. They expose themselves through overreach. They make mistakes trying to force outcomes. If you wait, observe, and conserve, You inherit the field when they're depleted. Victory without battle is not weakness. It is supremacy. History repeats this lesson endlessly. At the Red Sea, the Israelites were trapped. Every instinct screamed for immediate action, but the delay turned fear into theater. When the moment came, the outcome was absolute, not merely survival, but demonstration. Timing didn't just solve the problem, it rewrote the narrative. Machiavelli would nod at this. He believed that decisive moments are not rushed, they are engineered. You don't force fate. You position yourself so that when fate moves, it has nowhere else to land but in your hands. The third and most ignored principle is character preparation. This is where most people get uncomfortable because it implies responsibility. Delay is not just about circumstances. It is about who you are becoming while you wait. Machiavelli observed that leaders who reached power without inner discipline inevitably imploded. Not because the world attacked them, but because power amplified their flaws. Power is a mirror with volume turned up. Whatever is unstable in you becomes impossible to hide once authority arrives. That's why premature success ruins people. It doesn't test them. It exposes them before they're ready to be seen. Ask yourself this without flinching. If everything you're asking for arrived tomorrow, would it elevate you or reveal you? Would it sharpen your character or collapse it? Because the life you want requires a version of you that may not exist yet. Delay is the forge where that version is made. This is why rushing is so dangerous. You don't just risk failure. You risk becoming disqualified from future opportunity. When you burn bridges, reveal ambition too early, demand recognition before earning gravity, you leave a residue. People remember, systems remember, and next time, the door doesn't just stay closed, it disappears. Machiavelli warned against revealing ambition before establishing competence. Ambition without proof triggers resistance. Competence without noise attracts invitation. The quiet builder is always underestimated until he is unavoidable. Picture a dam filling slowly behind stone walls. No noise, no drama, just pressure accumulating. The impatient man drills holes to see results faster. The strategist reinforces the walls. And when release finally happens, one floods a village. The other generates power for generations. Waiting is not about doing nothing. It is about doing the invisible work. Studying, building, refining. Removing weaknesses no one applauds, but everyone eventually feels. When the moment arrives, it won't feel frantic. It will feel inevitable. And that's how you know the timing is right. When action feels calm instead of desperate. When you're not asking, will this work? But how precisely do I execute? That's not hope. That's readiness. Power does not respond to hunger. It responds to structure, and structure is built in silence. Here's where the lesson turns inward, and most people resist it. Waiting is only powerful if you're using it correctly. Time alone does nothing. Time plus intention transforms everything. Machiavelli never respected idle patience. He respected strategic patience, the kind that sharpens while others stagnate. Most people wait like prisoners. They complain. They scroll. They replay the same thoughts. They count days instead of accumulating advantage. That kind of waiting weakens you. It turns delay into decay. But Machiavelli's waiting was predatory, silent, observant, calculated. While others burned emotional fuel, he conserved. While others revealed themselves through noise, he gathered intelligence through stillness. This is where modern lives quietly sabotage themselves. You see it everywhere. Someone spends 6 months in a job and already wants a promotion, not because the timing is right, but because their ego is uncomfortable with anonymity. They feel unseen. So they speak too soon, ask too loudly, signal ambition before indispensability. Machiavelli would call this self-exposure. The boss doesn't say no because they dislike you. They say no because you've shown hunger without leverage. Hunger repels power. Gravity attracts it. The same mistake shows up in relationships. 3 weeks in, and someone is already forcing depth. Talking about forever. Demanding certainty. Accelerating intimacy before trust has hardened. It feels romantic, but it's not. It's fear disguised as passion. Machiavelli understood that influence over hearts follows the same law as influence over states. Gradual control outlasts sudden conquest. When you rush closeness, you don't create bonds. You trigger defenses. Then there's money. A small windfall arrives, and suddenly someone wants to burn down stability to chase vision. Quit the job. Start the business. Bet everything. They call it faith. Machiavelli would call it undisciplined imagination. Risk without preparation isn't courage. It's financial self-sabotage with a motivational soundtrack. The pattern is always the same. Acting to escape discomfort instead of acting to secure advantage. Machiavelli believed that every major move should pass through a brutal filter. Before you act, you must ask questions most people are too impatient to face. What information am I missing? Who else is involved that I don't fully understand? What second and third order consequences follow this decision? If I wait 6 more months, what changes? Not emotionally, structurally. This is not paranoia. This is intelligence. The world rewards those who see the board, not just their own piece. When you slow down enough to observe, patterns emerge. Motivations reveal themselves. Resistance points soften. Timing becomes visible. The impatient never see this because they're too busy proving they exist. Another uncomfortable truth Machiavelli understood. Not every delay is meant to last forever. There is a moment when waiting becomes more dangerous than acting. But that moment cannot be forced. It announces itself through alignment. History calls this the tipping point. Scripture calls it such a time as this. Machiavelli would call it convergence. You know it's coming when preparation feels complete, not perfect, but solid. When external conditions begin mirroring your internal readiness. When the cost of waiting quietly exceeds the risk of moving. And most importantly, when you feel calm about both success and failure. Not numb, not reckless, calm. Desperation disappears when timing is right. There's no frantic energy, no need to convince, no urge to rush. Action feels clean, surgical, almost boring. That's how you know it's real. People misunderstand this moment because they expect fireworks. But power rarely announces itself loudly. It arrives like gravity, suddenly undeniable. This is why Machiavelli emphasized emotional control. The person who cannot regulate urgency will always act too soon. Emotion compresses time. Strategy expands it. When you're emotionally flooded, everything feels immediate. When you're disciplined, you can afford to wait. Think of emotional control as insulation. It protects you from reacting to pressure that isn't meant for you yet. Without it, every challenge feels like a call to action. With it, you can differentiate signal from noise. The world will constantly bait you into premature moves. Social pressure, comparison, fear of missing out. The illusion that everyone else is ahead. Machiavelli would warn you. Most people you're comparing yourself to are moving loudly because they have nothing solid underneath. Noise is compensation. The quiet ones are dangerous. Here's the paradox. The more you stop chasing the moment, the faster it finds you. Because when you're not forcing outcomes, you're building capacity. And capacity attracts opportunity without begging. I waited years before certain doors opened in my own life. Not because I was indecisive, because I was incomplete. I was learning the terrain, studying patterns, building internal structure. When the moment came, I didn't hope it would work. I knew it would, not from arrogance, but from evidence. That's the difference between faith and fantasy. Faith is built on preparation. Fantasy is built on impatience. Machiavelli's final warning in this domain is sharp and unforgiving. The man who needs power most is the man least fit to hold it. Neediness leaks. It makes you predictable. It makes you manipulable. The one who can walk away is the one who sets terms. So if you're waiting right now, don't waste it resenting the silence. Use it to remove weaknesses, build skills, accumulate leverage, strengthen your emotional spine. Become the version of yourself that can handle what you're asking for without breaking. Because when timing finally aligns, life does not test you gently. It hands you weight. And only those who trained in silence can carry it without being crushed. When the door opens, it won't ask if you're ready. It will assume you are. Most people never miss their moment because it never arrives. They miss it because they don't recognize it. They've spent so long oscillating between impatience and fear that when timing finally aligns, they hesitate, or they move with the wrong energy. Machiavelli warned about this too. He believed that fortune favors the prepared mind, but punishes the confused one. When the window opens, you must already know who you are and what you're here to do. This is where readiness separates itself from hope. Readiness is quiet. It doesn't need reassurance. It doesn't ask for permission. When the moment arrives, it moves without drama. Hope, on the other hand, panics. It asks, "Is this it?" It overthinks. It leaks doubt. And in power dynamics, doubt is blood in the water. So, how do you recognize the right moment without forcing it? Machiavelli would give you a simple but ruthless test. Look at the cost of waiting versus the cost of acting. When waiting preserves strength, you wait. When waiting begins to erode position, you move. Timing is not emotional. It is structural. Esther understood this. She prepared in silence. She gathered intelligence. She waited while the threat matured. But there came a point when silence would have meant death. At that moment, she didn't hesitate. She stepped forward with precision, not panic. That's not bravery born of impulse. That's courage forged by patience. Most people fail here because they never complete the preparation phase. They want movement without mastery. They want change without consequence. Machiavelli would say they are ruled by fortune instead of negotiating with it. Power does not reward those who merely want it. It rewards those who can absorb it. This is why timing and peace are inseparable. When you're ready, you feel strangely calm about outcomes. You are not attached to success because you are prepared for responsibility. You are not terrified of failure because you've already survived obscurity. The man who has endured silence is not afraid of noise. Think about how this changes your prayer, your planning, your decisions. Instead of demanding answers, you start asking better questions. What am I being trained to handle? What weaknesses are being exposed right now? What advantage can I quietly build while others complain? Waiting stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like positioning. Machiavelli understood that positioning is invisible to the impatient. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. From the inside, everything is aligning. This shift changes how you move through the world. You stop forcing conversations. You stop chasing validation. You stop announcing ambition. You let competence speak over time. You let consistency replace noise, and something subtle happens. People begin to adjust around you. Doors open without explanation. Invitations arrive without begging. That's not luck. That's gravity. The paradox Machiavelli left us with is unsettling but liberating. The less you need the breakthrough, the closer you are to it. Need creates distortion. Detachment creates clarity. When you are no longer desperate to arrive, you finally become someone worth arriving for. This doesn't mean apathy. It means alignment. You still work. You still prepare. But you don't chase outcomes like they owe you something. You build until outcomes come looking for you. Most people try to bend time with force. Machiavelli bent it with understanding. He knew that history does not belong to the loudest voices, but to the most disciplined minds. Those who can wait without rotting. Those who can act without trembling. So if you've been frustrated by delay, consider this possibility. What if the silence is protecting you from an entrance that would destroy you if you arrive too soon? What if the door hasn't opened because the room beyond it still requires a stronger version of you? Power doesn't rush you. It tests you. And when the test is complete, it doesn't knock politely. It swings the door wide and asks one question without words. Can you hold this without losing yourself? The ones who can don't celebrate loudly. They simply step through, because they were ready long before anyone noticed. Here is the awakening most people never reach. Timing is not something you wait for outside of yourself. Timing is something you become. When Machiavelli spoke about fortune, he was not describing luck. He was describing a force that responds to preparation the way fire responds to oxygen. You don't command it. You shape the conditions that make its arrival inevitable. This is where everything comes together. Most people live as if life owes them an explanation. They want clarity before commitment, assurance before effort, results before responsibility. But power moves in the opposite direction. It reveals itself only after discipline has been proven. It answers readiness, not pleading. That is why the silence breaks only when you no longer resent it. At a certain point, something inside you shifts. You stop asking, "Why is this taking so long?" and start asking, "What would someone who is ready already be doing differently?" That question is dangerous because it removes excuses. It forces ownership. It turns waiting into work. You stop wasting energy on comparison. You stop reacting to pressure. You stop interpreting every delay as a personal verdict. Instead, you treat your life like a long campaign. Every quiet season becomes training. Every obstacle becomes data. Every frustration becomes a signal pointing to a weakness that must be removed. Machiavelli believed that the greatest advantage a ruler could have was self-mastery, not moral purity, not popularity. Control. Control over impulse. Control over fear. Control over the urge to act simply to feel alive. Because the man who cannot govern himself will always be governed by circumstance. This is the final test of timing. Can you stay disciplined when no one is watching? Can you remain sharp when there is no applause? Can you prepare for a future version of your life without demanding immediate proof that it's coming? Most people can't. That's why most people never arrive. But if you can, if you truly can, something irreversible happens. You develop a kind of quiet confidence that cannot be shaken. Not arrogance, not bravado, certainty. The kind that comes from knowing you've done the work in private. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. Others feel it before you say a word. Opportunities respond to it. Resistance adjusts around it. This is why the final stage of waiting feels different. It no longer feels like holding your breath. It feels like standing on solid ground. You're not frozen, you're poised. And when movement comes, it doesn't feel rushed. It feels exact. This is what Machiavelli meant when he implied that fortune favors those who know how to adapt to the times. Adaptation is not reaction. It is alignment. You don't chase the wave. You position yourself where the wave must pass. And here is the most unsettling truth of all. The moment you stop trying to force your breakthrough is often the moment it becomes unavoidable. Because desperation repels power, but composure attracts it. The one who needs validation leaks weakness. The one who is whole without it radiates authority. That is why the people who change their lives most dramatically are often the ones who look calm right before it happens. No frantic energy, no public struggle, no dramatic declarations, just movement. Clean, precise, final. They waited long enough to know who they were. So here is your challenge, and it is not symbolic. It is practical. Identify one area of your life where you have been pushing too hard. Forcing outcomes, demanding speed, trying to extract certainty before earning it. A relationship, a career move, a financial leap, a personal transformation. For the next 30 days, do the opposite of what your impatience demands. Do not withdraw into passivity. Withdraw into preparation. Build skill. Build structure. Build leverage. Strengthen your discipline. Tighten your routines. Study the terrain. Observe the people involved. Ask what information you're missing. Ask what weakness in you would be exposed if success arrived too early. Replace pressure with positioning. This is not about giving up. It is about upgrading your approach. Because when you align your timing with strategic wisdom, you stop fighting life and start cooperating with it. You stop trying to bend reality to your emotions and start shaping yourself to meet reality on its terms. And when that alignment happens, delays no longer feel cruel. They feel precise, almost merciful, like a hand holding you back from stepping into traffic you couldn't yet see. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Power is not kind, but it is consistent. It rewards those who respect its rules. One of those rules is simple and unforgiving. Readiness comes before release. The same force that waited for centuries to move history forward is at work in your life right now, not as punishment, not as neglect, but as calibration, measuring, testing, hardening you for what comes next. The question is no longer whether the moment will arrive. The question is whether you will recognize it when it does, and whether you will be strong enough to step into it without destroying what you've been given. Because when the silence finally breaks, it breaks all at once. And only those who learned how to wait will know how to move. Silence was never abandonment. It was alignment. What felt like delay was not life pushing you away, but life shaping you into someone capable of holding what you asked for. Power does not respond to urgency. It responds to readiness. Every moment you spent waiting was a moment you were being trained, your discipline tested, your patience sharpened, your weaknesses quietly exposed. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was accidental. The world does not open its doors for those who knock the loudest, but for those who can walk through without hesitation when the time comes. From this point forward, stop treating stillness as punishment. Treat it as positioning. While others rush, reveal, and burn themselves out, you are learning how to stand firm without demanding proof. That composure is rare, and rarity creates gravity. When your moment arrives, it won't announce itself with chaos. It will arrive calmly, almost quietly, as if it was always meant for you. There will be no need to chase it, explain yourself, or prove your worth. The work will already be done. And when people ask how it happened so quickly, how everything seemed to fall into place overnight, you'll understand something they won't. It wasn't overnight. It was built in silence. And silence, when mastered, is not emptiness. It is power waiting to be released.